So I'll pass the time over now to Professor Tan Beng Kiang, so she can take the panel discussion away. Thanks.
Thank you, Sean.
Thanks.
Hello, everybody. Today, I'm very honored to have Professor John Liu back for this panel discussion. Actually, it's very late for him now. He's in the US, so we will make sure we promptly finish on time. I think it has been a very fruitful and insightful 2 days for me for this panel discussion, for this symposium. Before I pose some questions to the panelists, let me introduce Professor Paulus. He wasn't in the presenting the symposium. I'll just say a few words about him. He's from the Duta Wacana University in Yogyakarta, and he finished his master and PhD in Stuttgart University in Germany. And the subjects he teach are architecture, housing, and urban design. And he and his students have been doing several community empowerment projects in some Indonesia remote areas. The other panelist is Professor Wong Yun Chi. He is faculty member at the Department of Architecture at the National University of Singapore. He is also the co-convener of AUN-ADERA. His doctorate is in MIT, Massachusetts, and he's a scholar of works and writing of Richard Buckminster Fuller. He teaches architecture design and lectures on architecture history and theory and architecture aesthetics. And he writes and research on contemporary architecture of Singapore, history of modern architecture, and contemporary practices. The other members in the panelists are Professor John Liu, who is our keynote from yesterday, and Professor Teo Chee Kiong from UCSI Malaysia, who just spoke earlier about the design and build in school. Yeah, so thank you all. Maybe I would like to start with posing a question from yesterday's panel discussion. I think we all agree that the people in this symposium are once very enthusiastic about community engagement. And I think we all feel that it's something important students have to learn. And then there are many ways we heard over the 2 days. Some are through service learning, some are through compulsory modules, some are through option modules as electives, some are through excursion during summer holiday, and some are student-initiated excursion, like the last speaker of this morning. So my question is, it seems for almost all the cases, it's only a small number of students who get the chance to be so-called exposed or to be involved in some level of community engagement, whether through modules or through projects or through actual building something. My question is, what are your views of how can we scale it up so that every student in an intake cohort can benefit from it? So no sequence. If you would like to express your opinion, just please on your mic. Perhaps I can start with Professor Teo, because I think you have this like first year compulsory hands-on to build something, but I'm not sure at that point, do they know or are they involved with the community?
Yeah, no, for the first semester, usually we will post it at the first week or the second week that the student will be visiting the workshop, and we will have an orientation teaching them all kinds of tools that we have. And that one day of workshop, we basically will teach them how to build the bench. That I think it will just take about 4 hours for one bench for a group of 3 or 4. Yeah, so that would be the beginning of students begin to learn how to do things on their own. In fact, we envision to have more modules coming on. For example, the second semester, we are designing a steel module. So second semester steel module, and the third semester will be a casting exercise. So all these module modulars will eventually contribute to our future community program. And of this, talking about the student involvement on the community engagement, I think in 2015, we did incorporate it into our studios, so making the entire studio student joining the build in Kuala Sepetang. There is pro and con because that, as we know, that is really something that we want all the students to experience, and I think as a eventually become a profession in architecture, that everyone must have that similar thought about, understanding that the community is in fact the other definition of wider definition of client. So that is something that we thought is compulsory and really necessary for the architectural education. But the things that we have experienced during the build in Kuala Sepetang is that I would say out of 60 students, the very active one that really enthusiastic about working with the community would just about, I think, 30 to 40%. Yeah, then that means that on the site, the lecturer will have to entertain the other 60 to 70% who are not really active, who somehow were gone missing. So when it comes to assessment, there will be a lot of issue when addressing this into their design studio. So at the end, we sort of, I think, agree with a lot of our speakers that the most efficient way in doing the community engagement is to turn it into a voluntary basis projects. So the student know what is happening, and even we empower the student. As we see that the collapse under Sabe UCSI is a student initiated platform. So for them to work on the community project further. So yeah, there's a difficulties, I would say, implementing into formal courses. So perhaps that is another question. Maybe we should ask a reverse question back, that whether our formal courses, the structure of the formal courses, is lack of the flexibility. It's lack of the flexibility to accommodate this type of pedagogy that perhaps it's not just by semester basis, but in fact it's by projects, and it will spend slightly longer time. Yeah, in terms of the education. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Professor John Liu, you mentioned yesterday that for the undergrad, it was a 2-semester kind of module and interdisciplinary. So do you have any thoughts about, if an architecture program cohort is so big, how can we have a scale-up program where all students would be able to experience community engagement?
Yeah, thank you. I've been thinking about this since yesterday. I think the question is a good one, and in the presentations, I sense that there is this issue regarding whether students ought to be exposed to participation and engagement across the board, or whether it should be limited to certain numbers of students. And I think in our experience, because our program is relatively small, so that we were able to have everyone, whether they are interested in the track of a career path in community design, that everyone ought to be exposed, and we try to do that. And that's only possible when our group is really small. Our undergraduate, each time we only have 12 at the most, twice that, 24 students. And in the graduate program, we each year only have 30 students. So given that size, we are able to do that. Now, if in a larger program, such as your program at NUS, how to, in fact, have all the students be exposed to this kind of engagement and participatory experience, I think is a challenge. And I think maybe in this case, there ought to be combined with hands-on practicum, working in the community and doing workshops. I think there may be courses that are more, in a way, more theoretical or more concerned about the rationale and the reason and the research side of why it is important to be in a participatory mode. And the reason why I'm saying that is that I think even if you are just a architect, designer, not necessarily concerned with the community. Like if you're doing a commercial building, office building, or for the private sector, you're an architect or designer, it is still very good, very important for you to learn the techniques of communication and engagement with your client. So there's something, I think, more general about what we're talking about in terms of engagement and participation. So there ought to be courses that address the issue of how you manage your communication with your clients, no matter in whatever situation. So that may be a complement to the more focused engagement and hands-on type of training. That's and the other point is that I think it's been mentioned that because hands-on directly working in the community, the timing may not work particularly well with your semester system, because semester ends and the project is still there, right? So there needs to be a way of having the students continue on either in a volunteer basis or in some other role, so that their commitment to the project affects how the end results of the real project on site will come out. So that issue, I think, is also there, and that needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Yun-Chi, what are your views about this? You are muted.
Yes. I just noted. Yeah.
All right.
No, I think the point about the pedagogical intent of community engagement, I think, is something that's worthy to sort of unpack. And I think John pointed out one, I think, important aspect, which is about communicating, right? I think this is one thing that we don't do very well with our, I would say, general architectural education. In fact, I think we inculcate our students to talk in a very, very indirect way and in a very obtuse way that sometimes I think confuses. In fact, I'm also going into that mode now that confuses people, right? So in talking to the public and community in general, how do you connect to them? I think this is so important, right? And that we sort of see all the very, I would say, valiant efforts by different groups that we over these past 2 days, trying to really get at what the needs are and how to explain what the options are. And all these are very important skills. I want to maybe backtrack a little bit to your question, Bing Kiang, which I think at least troubles me a lot now, because I heard a report, at least from in Singapore I think a week or 2 weeks ago. Out of 100 students who have graduated going on to professional practice after 2 years, only 3 of them wants to stay on as architects. I don't know how it's like in the other countries, in Indonesia, in Malaysia, in Thailand. I don't think they're that as good. I think it's quite dismal generally. And yet the professional training as such is continues, to valorize, the architects in this fashion, and not recognizing that overall, I mean, the real activity is a lot more teamwork. And increasingly, I would say the kind of disparity that we sort of observe in the kind of environments that are being produced suggests that I think more and more important work, architects, I use the word architects very, very loosely now, have to do in this so-called, I think words I used to describe the neglected, the marginalized, the underlooked, the threatened areas, right? And these are areas that are not recognized at all by our profession. And I think if there are, I wouldn't say this is very token. And token in the sense that, well, they're nice to have these things on the cake, as icing that you present, right? Whoever to say that, we are socially minded, But trust of it is that increasingly, I think someone put it out, I think in one of the sessions, that we are operating in a larger context. I think John also said that too, right? I mean, it's inevitable that when you look at small communities of street hawkers, in villages for that matter, they are all linked up in very elaborate ways to the kind of inequities that are produced in the cities. And I have to say that as architects, we carry out with us a lot of urban loads, urban cultural legacies. And some of these legacies, I think, tend to even alienate further. So I think this is a really hard time to really think about identity of the architect in the light of this kind of disparity. John, if you recall, as a young freshman coming to architecture school, I met you. This is in 1975. That shows you how old he is and how old I am. I think that summer I sneaked into a United Nations environmental program at Washington U in St. Louis. And that was John as a PhD with a few others came in to talk about his CDW, I think at that time, and also the program for developing countries. And the takeaway from that session as a freshman was that, well, hell, all the underdevelopment in developing countries are created by development in the first or the north, And right. Unfortunately, I think that pattern is being played out too as well in all our countries, right? Just not in ASEAN. I would say any country you point to, you see that the urban culture manifesting that inequities. So in a sense, I think this broad issues of community engagement is more than just like going to look at villages, documenting things on site. And of course, I think not to poo-poo all these things that are being done, I think they're important because I think for me, I have to honestly confess to you, I was so excited by looking at all this documentation. I said, my God, it's the first time I sort of see that we are validating, we're emphasizing the needs to be on the ground again, to experience, to sense, okay, maybe something is sensed wrongly, but nonetheless, we are there sensing. As opposed to I think in most of schools now, we are now doing design by remote, right, through images, by data, or this thing. And I think this is, for me, quite dangerous. So if there's anything to sort of redeem and argue really for the place of community engagement in our education, professional education, are those kind of pedagogical intent. So it's not the question of whether this is voluntary. It's not a question of whether we should involve one class or another. I think it should be broadly the awareness that should be brought into the fore. Okay, that's my own sense. Yeah, thank you.
Paulos, what about you? What do you think?
Thank you so much, Professor Benkan. It's a little bit different for us in Wacana Christian University because this community service is a compulsory project for all students at the university. So this means every student have to take this subject. And then this subject, there is a requirement of this subject that the students should minimal have finished for 90 credit semester. It means this is in a 6th or 7th semester. If they do not finish the 6th semester, they cannot take this subject. So, and then the community service is not only the architecture alone, but this is the multidisciplinary subject. We have medicine, we have also business, we have also informatics, we have also languages, and also biotechnology, also the theology faculty. So all students should take this subject. So in our university, why we put it in this after 6th semester? Because we think about that all students should have enough knowledge about their disciplines, about architect, about informatics, about business, and anything. And then in order to do this, we have many places in Indonesia, in several islands in Indonesia. We live in Yogyakarta in Java, but I think one time I invited also Wenkian to AUN-ADERA to do something like sharing about this community service also. Then I invited also from Carol Ma from Hong Kong and from the Philippines also. Then we share this situation. But this is quite interesting because our program during the preparation, they do not. I mean the lecturer or the supervisor do not give the subject, the discipline of where they study, but this is general information about the target area. For instance, in Sumba Islands, and then we just give the culture, the people there, and also the environment and everything about the Sumba Islands. And then the group will go there. We usually call them with zero knowledge. It is not allowed to do assessment at the beginning. This is our program for all students subject. And then they come to the community, and then in the 1 week, we have only 1 month program. In 1 week, they have to learn from the community. So they have to learn. During the learning something from the community, they do it also service for the community. So, but they cannot do assessment for everything negative in this target area. Afterwards, in the 2nd week, they have to share their funding to the community. Is it true that you have this problem? Is it true that you have this potential for your areas? And then they discuss with this. And this is the 2nd week. And the 3rd week, they decide, I mean, not the students, the communities decide. We need this, we need this, we need this. Yeah. But after knowing what they need, and then the students, and of course with the supervisor, they have to develop strategy. How to empower the community. And we never promise them to build something because we don't have money. But we try to ask them to think about what they need and then to connect with the local government and also local organizations, NGOs. So we will work together. And then the strategy is fine. Then we are doing many workshop training and also something like if it is necessary, we can go something like field trip to another place to see what is success story about something in another area. We always involve with the community. And the third until fourth weeks, this is we try to conclude what it need. Usually, during in 1 month, there is some small project that you can build. Yeah, for instance, like making renovating the building, but it's only small, not so big project. But the big project is will be done by the government or local organization. And then, if it is in Yogyakarta, our Institute for Research for Center for Community Research and Community Service will take care of this program and in order to continue. And then next year maybe they will be continued again with another program. But if it is in the remote area, for instance in Papua or in Sulawesi and Halmahera, so we give it to the local government, and the local government will take care of our suggestion, and then they make some program in order to develop this area. For instance, for the clean water supply, maybe for street, for electricity, and anything. And we are mostly working with the marginalized people, both in the village, in the rural area, and also in the urban area. So that is so in my opinion, I think it is, I don't know if it is voluntary program, but for us, this is compulsory. So everybody should learn. According to our evaluations, about 60 or 70% of students are interested in doing this, and they are learning something. They are learning from her friends in a group. They are learning how to debate for proposing the program. We are trying to understand how the people, the marginalized people, thinking about how to develop their area. So that is the point that the students like. But the 30% students who doesn't like the program because it is they have to stay in the village. There is no such a proper toilet, and there is no water, and clean water is so be walking about 2-3 kilometers to take that. That is so not interesting for them. But for all majority students, this is a very good experience, especially about how to work collaborate, to work together in order to solve the problem faced by the community. So that is my opinion.
Yep. Thank you, Carlos. Please, the panelists, if you want to react to anything the panelists say, just go ahead. Maybe I want to pick up on the point that Professor Teo said about, when they went to do the build, maybe only 30% of the students were very keen, or the other way around, whatever. So this links back to a question somebody was asking Professor Liu yesterday about individualism versus community. And she actually asked whether Prof. Liu thinks that for the younger generation, it's not relevant to them about community wisdom. And Professor John Liu's answer was that he Professor John Liu is very optimistic. He says there is this innate quality in every young person. You just have to draw it out from them. And I think I really appreciate his optimism, but I want to play the devil's advocate, right? So from some of your experiences, even from Paulo's, right, you say like only 60%, and then the other 30% not interested. Then of course we can appeal to the interested. And then from my own experience, when we have all these voluntary overseas design and build project, the students who volunteer are usually not the strong design students, not the ones who get A for design and all that. And it is those who are very good design students, they are not interested in this kind of, or build for the community or go and do and build something. So I would like your opinion about, in your own country, do you think there's this problem with the, the younger generation not thinking community is relevant? And also in very urbanized places like maybe Taipei, Singapore. I mean, Singapore, we actually always lament about the loss of community, that the citizens we have lost the old days of what we call the kampong spirit. So maybe I would like to get your reaction about that. Like how can we draw that community, sense of community or interest in the community from this young generation? Anybody can respond.
Can I say something?
Yes, Professor John.
All right, I'll just say something very simple. I think the idea of community is true that many young people are not apparently are not interested. But I think if we pose the question, or we pose the issue of community in a different light, it will perhaps make young people think a little differently. Now, I think it's true that when we say community, many people tend to think it's something old, something traditional, something that's very, very local or rural. It's old people and all that. So young people are not interested. But I think if we turn it around and say that all human activities occur in the midst of community. So in a way, we broaden the definition of what a community is. And in that way, I think in every endeavor that we do as a profession across the board, just like what Yongqi was just mentioning about the generalizability of the question of how we as planners and designers relate to our clients. Then I think in every aspect of all problems of the environment, it all comes back to how we look at community. Okay, so in that sense, I think we enlarge the scope and meaning of the community to be inclusive of different kinds of interpersonal, social interaction relationships. And all we're trying to do is that we use community as the focus of our actions, no matter at which end of the spectrum we are engaged in. We could be designing a whole city, but our focus is on creating workable, livable, and humane communities, i.e., good social relationships on a daily basis. In that sense, I think young people, they will be interested, because I think in this day, as we see, as I mentioned yesterday, I think we are too much affected by the idea that we are basically out for ourselves. It goes through our education. It permeates in all parts of the society. That is, you want to advance, you need to beat out somebody else. You need to be in a competition so that you can move ahead, right? That kind of mentality or that kind of value system is really affecting us and is causing the decline of the community. And young people right now, I believe, is really in a time where they feel that they don't really want to live that way. And I think it's particularly true in the West. It's also true in areas or in countries where economy, the focus on economic development is so fast, so strong, overtakes what we as humans are trying to construct as humane, livable environments. And young people, even I would say in places like China, they are tired of this kind of a rat race. Everything is for money. Everything is for advancement. So they're looking for something else. They're looking for identity. They're looking for activities, actions. They're looking for meaningful involvement in trying to make a better life for their fellow friends, family, community, neighbors, etc. So if in our educational system, we can design a situation where where young people feel that they can make a meaningful difference, I think we will find that the percentage of people who are willing to do this kind of work will increase very dramatically. I have seen some of it happening in Taiwan. Of course, there's a lot more to do as well. Thank you.
Thank you, John. What about the other panelists? What's your response?
Yes, I would also like to respond to this question. This is really an interesting discussion that after experiencing the problem that we only have 30 to 40% actively participating in the build activities in Kuala Sebatang, then in the latest projects that you could see that in our students group that we actually enable the student and allowing them to choose what they want to do instead of telling them what to do. So after forming the students group, that is a collapse, and we can really see that how important it is for the student to recognize that everyone is different. So we are not forcing everyone to do actually the same thing. So and also it's actually through a series of observation in the communities. We also found that there are different types of people in the community. As I said, that they are builders, they are community shelf, and there are also some farmers come to help. So we can't force everyone to build with us. So at the end of the day, our students, some of them, they are not actually so-called active in design. Perhaps they can still find a place in this community engagement exercises. Yeah. So this is how the program further evolve. I think the flexibility is I would say mainly thanks to that is not a formal practice. Yeah, if it is a formal, pedagogy that we incorporated into the things. Sadly to say that even some changes, simple changes of the syllabus that we will need to inform, the higher authority, education authority of the changes. So the flexibility is really important in these types of programs. Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, Venkat.
Yeah, sure, Carlos.
No,
Go ahead.
I just want to respond also, but according to our experiences, not the student who get the design subject A, he has to take this subject also, but afterwards they're so different. Yeah, before doing this community service, yeah, we usually call it also service learning. The method service learning, we do this community service, because before doing this, they're so only thinking about the theoretical and everything. But after doing this community service, they have an open their mind and brighter, and that every problem, for instance, in the village, they have a problem about developing healthy houses, for instance. And then the architect think about, oh, theoretically should be like this, but in reality, it's different, because this depend on the culture, depend on the relationship, depend on the information come to the village or to the slum area. And then they try to learn how the community thinks about that problem. And then architect students will be supported also from the economic, the business student, from the medicine student, in order to the public health and everything. And then but you know, the first week is the very, very, very stressing, because all students have so ego with their discipline. Architect, no, you are not architect. I'm an architect. Architect should be like this, like this. But the medicine student said, no, you made it wrong. And this is sometimes is also fight among the students. But this is the role of the supervisor, the lecturer who involved. The lecturer also stay in the area for 1 month. So both students and lecturer work together. This sometimes there is also conflict with the communities. Yeah, because you know, communities is the education of the people live in this slum area or in the village, remote area. It's not so high with the student, like a student. And then there will be a conflict about this. But how to solve the problem? This is what I mean is a very, very, very good education for all students, including architect students. So that's why the community service, if it is compulsory in our university, it is compulsory for all students. So the student who got the very good in design, and it will be changes the think to design something. Yeah. So that is the what in our experiences.
Thank you, Carlos. YC, any response?
Oh, I mean, I want to shift the discussion a little bit towards something that I think Chi Kyung, we said earlier in your presentation, and I mean, you use the word new vernacularism. I mean, I'm trying to find some way to sort of like heighten, how say, the optimism, you know. There's a whole discussion about community as we hear is this us against them, you know, or the urban and the rural, right? And you seem to suggest that, well, if you can locate a new kind of possibility, right? This is really a vision. Think about a new kind of environment that has never been taught before, but doesn't arise from an urban culture, but could come from looking at these so-called traditional settlements. I think that in itself, I think is a sort of a point of optimism. And I think it goes to also looking at even communities in the urban areas. You know, I think this is a valuable, how to say, effort to sort of rejuvenate the idea in thinking about community, that it's not something that is old and past, but something that has possibilities, right? So you know, I'm just playing with what you mentioned about this new vernacularism. That in the old you find new, and that's how you renew and you continue and sustain these communities. But I also feel that the whole thing about looking at communities also give us a very important lead and understanding into the everyday life. You know, that's something that I don't think we valued as much, and I think it's important for us to, while we might not have every student involved in it, but to find opportunities to embed them in understanding communities. So I remember one trip that I took with one of my colleague to Tamil Nadu. This is a story I like to tell all the time because I think it has to do a lot with our role as educators. If we have sensitivity about communities, to sort of bring our students along to get them to look at the over or the underlook. And this is a case where a student came around the Cape of southern India into Kerala, and after seeing the horrific life in the cities, in Chennai, in Tanjore, you know, we came to Kerala, and this is a very idyllic, fecund landscape. And we took off our shoes, we're sitting there, and then suddenly the student asked us, why are we sitting here in this rural landscape, you know? And they say to the student, well, we are looking at the good life, you know. And the students sort of look at us and say incredulously and say, what kind of good life? It's just a piece of dirt, you know. And so we have to sit the student down next to us and say, well, look at this really wonderful piece of dirt, right? You look at the paddy field, is ready for harvest. There's rice to eat. There's chicken running around, you know, there's protein for everybody. And look at that temple. I mean, it looks like it's in ruins, but look at the site. Those are all these bricks. It looks like they have enough surplus to build the temple. And then look at the cloth line. They have this dyed clothing, you know, and this is where there's enough clothing for everybody in the village. In a few words, you know, after all the urban squalor they've seen, we come to a village where in this dirt we see the good life, right? And I think in communities we see all these things as well, right? And the thing is, how do we just sometimes don't just be involved in engaging, but observing, right? And drawing out these things and not romanticizing them either, but suggesting to them that alternatives, communities in these kind of areas provide us with alternative visions about life. And I think that's a value, you know, that is so important. I think our urban kids, you know, think that the only thing that really matters are all these simulations and all this, what they call produced and desired objects. And I sense that the participation in community areas and seeing what is done, how life is conducted, I think in itself is an extremely important education. And of course, you can go one step further, which is to, you know, how to say, find ways to how to say, to equalize these also the inequities that we observe. I mean, really, that's the role of a social activist. And if we do come to that kind of point, you know, more power to our students. But we want to show them that there are all these possible options in the social aspects of design, right? And that's so important, and that could come from understanding the communities in which they live and they experience. So I think so. So fundamental things has been done to our professional education that still heightens the iconic, right, objects, the importance of corporate practices, right? We take that as a given, you know. We don't even question that, and I say that we should. Yeah.
Thank you, YC. We have 10 minutes left, and I would like to ask after, I mean, some of you have gone through the whole 2 days. What do you think we can do together as ADERA beyond this symposium? Maybe one key wish list you have. I mean, Professor John Liu, I know you couldn't sit through all, but what do you think as a group here in the Asian ASEAN context that we could do beyond this symposium? John?
Thank you. I'm sorry I did not sit through all the presentations, but I did spend a little time reading the abstracts, and I find that the symposium, the participants and the presenters are really, really interesting, and I wish I had time to listen in. I think each of the projects presented and the process and how to engage are all very, very interesting. The few things that I thought were common that I feel are important as well. One is that we are, I think we are moving forward beyond and transcending the idea that professionals can solve the problems, one way kind of a mode. That is, we do need to work in a collaborative way with whoever the end users are, so that this kind of cooperation, collaboration is really, really important, and will be the trend for the future in refining our work. So this part of the experience, I think, from the symposium ought to find a way of being presented as a group somehow. This notion that we are no longer in a traditional mode of a professional trying to do something for the community or for the end user, that we have the final say, but that the solution comes from a joint, collaborative, cooperative process. So this point, if somehow in all of the presentations we can ferret out that key idea, and then I don't know, maybe all of you presenters maybe can write a book together and publish it, and for many others around Asia and other parts of the world to sense this kind of energy that is happening in Asia. I think this is really important. I think in the back of this, the very basic idea, I think, is that we are coming to acknowledge the fact that we live in a multicultural kind of world. There's a great diversity of histories, cultures, geographies, and that each of these cultures have very deep, rich, robust sense of who they are and what are their aspirations. Now, the conditions are different, the resources are different, and problems abound, but each one of these communities has their own kind of capacity to energize the members of that community to work together. So I use the word local knowledge or community wisdom to describe that. I think that is at the basis of this kind of a collaborative work. So if there's a way of theorizing out of these experiences, turn it into a theory about community design for the future as a collaborative effort among the participants and presenters at the conference. I think this will be a great achievement and could very much contribute to thinking about what is really the end goal of architecture design planning. And I think for myself, I think certainly the focus on community, I believe, is of utmost importance. Whether, again, I stress, whether or not we're dealing with the city as a whole, the urban environment, the rural environment, with national land planning, with historical preservation, in all spheres, I believe community is at the core. So if this symposium could be a very specific kind of a beginning or start to locate community at the center of our professional endeavor, I think that would be also a great achievement. Thank you.
Thank you, John. YC, can I invite you for your views as co-convener and founder of this ADERA group? What do you think could be done as we move forward?
I think surely, in relation to this particular symposium, to look at the subject matter of community amidst the whole range of problem sets that has been unveiled for us, whether this is environmental degradation, social equity, what call amenities. I think it is important. But in relation to, of course, the network itself, I think our interest has always been trying to get at the legacy of education that all of us receive. I said all, I'm referring to all the ASEAN, what do you call, faculty members, you know, Paulo from Stuttgart, right? Myself, you know, variously American, Chi Kyung, probably Taiwanese, you know. I'm not saying that all these are alien, right? I mean, but they really have we carry with them certain ideologies and legacies, and I think we do what is natural and you know, take what we know immediately and apply. And I think we found this network basically to try to also see what are the problematics of these kind of applications of the knowledge that we have been trained under. And hopefully out of that kind of comparative studies and discussion and sharing. We can move forward maybe with new ways. That's why I was a bit mischievous just now. Suggest what would Kevin Lynch image of city analysis look like for Bangkok, right? I mean in all seriousness, probably have to develop a more multivariate, more inclusive way of looking at the city, right? And even the definition of communities for that matter. So the idea of this network is to really open up the whole aspects of architecture education, from study of history, theories, to review the kind of methods that we have. And I think today, even looking at the case studies, we already see various methods and approaches. And I think indeed that would be a very high, I would say, achievement coming out of this particular symposium, that we can put together a case study that would really carefully ferret out the succinct aspects of communities in all these what you call cases that we have seen, and of course, better still, if we can identify what are some of the problematics, whether it pertains to resources, whether it pertains to overcoming institutional biases, whether it's dealing with local institutions. And if you can, bring all this up into a kind of visible form, I think it does quite a lot, for our architectural education in this part of the world. Not to say we are exclusive. I'm sure other regions, places as well, have their own take of what the issues of architectural education is. I think, but singularly, I think we have certain commonalities in this part of the world. And the fact that we share similar kind of, I would say, cultural traditions. In Singapore, more so with the kind of mixes that we have. And also, of course, with the different kind of street life, urban life, right? So that I think will all go well for thinking about how we should examine this everyday life in light of the kind of architecture we produce. So I'm personally very excited and by the diversity and some of the contradictions, but I think this is really the purpose of this particular network. And I think the case study sharing, I think, very important. Maybe we can take another symposium where you look at play spaces, right, for communities, right, in all our different countries, in urbanized areas, in the rural areas, and highlight what this, let's say, play, for example, how it affects our local identity. So I think there's quite a lot to be done, and I think today is, the start of something hopefully that we can sustain. Yeah. So I thank Beng Kiang and all the speakers and panelists, at least bringing us to this point to make some decisions. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, the time is now 3:03. I will wrap up this session. I would like to thank the panelists very much, and I also would like to express thanks on behalf of myself, the co-chair, and also co-chair Professor Oran Ratmani, for all the presenters, the reviewers, the moderators, the panelists, and for the audience to stay with us over the 2 days. And I personally find it a very enriching and very insightful experience listening to what educators in other countries are doing, and I've learned a lot from this process. So thank you all very much from the bottom of my heart.